She's on drugs or something. No, I just hate. I hate. Okay, we're calling the cops on you because you're disturbing everyone in the town. But the law says I can't kill. If the law didn't say that I couldn't kill them, they'd all be dead.
Well, here's the thing. White America has been raised to believe, A, the police are always the good guys, and frankly, that black lives matter less than white comfort.
You have this imaginary wall around you. I don't know who damaged you. And me being a black man, I have to suffer for what somebody did to you? That has nothing to do with me. I'm not the enemy. I get that a lot from black women, that we're the enemy, we're liars, cheaters, we're dogs.
As a film director, you want to talk to those who just loving these brothers, these rappers. In fact, rappers such as Rick Ross, rappers such as Lil Wayne, those out there having you fall in love with that nonsense, having fallen in love with thinking that that's reality when they're talking about violence. But they living other than that. See, they walking around with bodyguards and etc. And they got you out here gang banging, got you out here shooting and killing one another. But listen, all that, the reality of it is when I see you. When I see you, it's over. It's over. Why? You're dead. 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 You're
Welcome to the Hustler's Corner, New York City. We're here with our new guest, Leslie Vass. Leslie, say hello, please, to our audience.
Hey, hello. Hello, everyone. How y'all doing today?
And here with, of course, our dedicated co-host, Jeanette Davis.
Hey, hey.
And we want to ask you to tell us about your beginnings from childhood on up, and then how you ended up in that crazy situation where you ended up behind bars for a crime you didn't commit. But start right from your humble beginnings.
As a child, I grew up in the South Baltimore area in Maryland. And as a kid, I remember playing in the streets, playing skillet and shooting marbles in the dirt and, you know, doing things that usual kids at that time would do in the early 70s, right? I grew up in a family of three boys, all three boys. I was the oldest. I have two younger brothers. One of them has passed. I still have another brother and my mom's, right? And my mom's was one of them ladies that come from Henderson, North Carolina, right up here to Maryland. She didn't have a real extensive education, and she also was not very familiar with anything pertaining to the legal system. She worked as a custodian for Baltimore County Public Schools, right? And that enhanced her to show that she wanted to be independent and not rely upon social services, right? That's one of the first things I remember from her. And the other thing is cooking, how to cook. But as I grew up, I used to take my brothers to nursery school and then attend the elementary school here for a period of time in Maryland. And then I ended up leaving and going to stay with my godmother in Brooklyn, New York, right, in Bed-Stuy. I was living in Brevoort Projects, 1839 Fulton Street, right there at Ralph and Buffalo. I went to school there. I ended up playing basketball, and I learned to do different little things that, you know, move around in Brooklyn, and that's what I really considered home. My mom's was still in Maryland, and I would come back here to Maryland and stay for the summer and then go back to New York in the winter for school and all. This particular time, when I got a little older, my godmother was like, Leslie, go spend some time with your mom, try to establish a better, you know, relationship, because it was kind of conflicting what we was going through, right? because I never met my biological father. So I was here in Maryland. I was playing on a neighborhood team they called BNBL, with the Baltimore Neighborhood Basketball League. I was making a semi-name for myself in that arena, in the sports arena, in the communities of playing different communities all throughout the city. Getting a pretty good reputation for being a ball handler. I started attending a high school in Maryland called Southern High School. And while attending Southern, I was getting write-ups in the paper for being player of the week for the city of Baltimore. A fellow by the name of Skip Wise was another fellow that, you know, he and I was somewhat pitted against each other as two of the top players for Baltimore City. I left my mom's home on February the 15th, 1975, to go to the Westport Pharmacy, which was the neighborhood pharmacy that was in the area where I lived at, that I had been raised at, that I knew people from. And I went to the store. I remember going in the store and talking to the people in the back, Mr. Clarence and old man Willie Adams. I walked through and they was like, boy, how many points you gonna give us this week, and all that kind of stuff. You know, because these men used to bet on the games and stuff. So I was like, you know, I talked to them for a couple minutes. I walk up front and I see the man that owns the store. All I knew him as was Doc. I speak to him and I said, look, Doc, I came to get a paper, which he knows I usually do. He said, well, Leslie, it's nothing in the store. There's one out in the booth out there in front of the store. They had a box chained to the pole that had newspapers in it. So I went out, purchased the paper, got the paper, and was standing there waiting to cross the street, come back towards my home. When I heard this man say, you with the leather coat on, go put your hands against the wall. No, he wasn't talking to me. You know, whoever it was, I turned and looked, and it's a police officer with a revolver out pointed towards me. And I'm like, you talking to me? But it's three other people standing there. So I don't know who he's saying. So he said, you with the leather coat on. I had on like a rust-colored leather. And he said, go put your hands against. So I pointed to myself. He said, yeah. So I walked to the wall and put my hand against the wall. And he told me, don't turn around. Keep your head facing the wall. Put the gun to the back of my head. I'm 17 years old. I've never been stopped by the police. I don't know anything about the criminal justice system. I don't have any idea of what's going on. This is a simple thing of me going to the store like I usually do, make a purchase, and I'm coming home. And here this man got this gun to my head. And I'm asking what's wrong. He's saying, shut up, you robbed the store. I said, I just came out the drugstore. He said, yeah, that's what you robbed. I said, you can ask Doc, man. He knows me. I didn't rob no drugstore. He said, I don't care. Keep your head facing the wall. Then I heard him say, is this the man? And instead of turning, because I'm afraid if I turn my head, this man might shoot, you know? So I hear a voice behind me say, it looks like him. And he said, okay, you're under arrest for armed robbery. You robbed the drugstore. And I said, man, please take me back in the store. You know, the doc can verify I just came out of there. They know me. They know me from this community. He was like, I don't want to hear that. He called for the paddy wag. During that time, they used to take you to the station that's nearest to the community that you are arrested at. They carried me to this place. When I get in there, they ask me how old I am. When I tell them that I'm 17, the man said behind the desk, said, he's a juvenile, big juvenile, put him by himself. They take me back and they lock me in the cell. And I'm like in the cell and I'm saying to myself, God, what is going on? I don't have no idea. I'm there for about, I'd say maybe 6 hours, because they arrested me in the morning, no longer. And they didn't really get to take me before a court commissioner until after 12 o'clock the next morning. So all that time I stayed in the cell without knowing anything, right? So when they take me into you bring me out the cell and walk me to this little courtroom, and when we go in the courtroom, I see my mother. So I'm trying to go through, and they telling me, no, you got to stay here, stand right here and all. And they saying, well, you know, you charged with armed robbery. You're going to be released into the custody of your mother. I remember him going through a colloquy telling me that I was going to be released to my mother because I was a juvenile. Then I remember him saying, and I'm telling you, don't go back to the drugstore until this case is over with. If you go back to the drugstore drugstore or you talk to anybody from the pharmacy, then your bond will be revoked and you'll be locked back up. That's what I heard. So that meant I don't go to the drugstore. I see Doc and them in the community. I stay away from them. I don't have no contact with none of these people because these people said, or this is what I'm under the impression. They're saying somebody robbed them and they trying to blame it on me.
Guilty, 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 guilty.
What am I supposed to do? So she said, well, Leslie, I don't know anything about this kind of stuff. I'm going to try to get a lawyer. So I guess she asked around to people she knew, and they referred her to this particular lawyer. His name was Robert Conrad. From the day that I met this man, I had a feeling about him. All he talked about was, you got a check for me. Asking my mother, did she have a check for him? The first time that I actually met him, I explained to him how I was arrested and that I didn't know anything about what they were talking about, and that the two men in the drugstore, I knew. When he said something about delivery drivers, I said, well, I know Mr. Clarence and I know Mr. Willie Adams because they deliver right in the community. So, these people knew me out there. He was like, well, I'm saying, you don't talk to nobody about your case, and I'm the lawyer. I know what's best. And my mom's is there, and she's like, look, Leslie, do what he tell you to do. He's the lawyer. He the one that been to school for that. He knows. So I'm older, but I ain't that old. So mom's, what she said, I'm gonna listen to, and I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. So when he saw me, I want you to come meet me 2 weeks from now. And this is in February 15th when I was arrested. February 16th, I was released that morning. I think that following week is when she took me to visit him for the first time. 2 weeks later, he asked me to come visit him. So when I go to visit him again, my mom's giving me an envelope to give to him. So as soon as he see me, did your mother send me something? That's his first question. So I said, yeah, she gave me an envelope to give to you. So I give him an envelope. So I asked him, I said, well, what about this case? I said, what about these people and the things that these people saying? I said, I don't know nothing about nobody robbing a drugstore. I said, I went in there to buy a newspaper. Doc told me paper was outside because they didn't have no more in there, but they had them in the box outside. So I went to get the paper out the box. I said, then this police officer arrested me. So he was like, well, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. It's not a problem. But that's all? He's like, yeah, that's it. He said, I'm the lawyer. You know what your mother said? Do what I tell you to do. I said, okay, sir. The next time that I met that man was the day of my trial, July the 2nd, 1975. I was standing outside in the hallway waiting for the doors of the courtroom to be open. And while I was standing there, I saw Mr. Clarence and I saw Mr. Willie Adams, the two delivery drivers that worked at the pharmacy. They were outside the courtroom also. And another man was standing there with them, but he was standing more off to the side talking to this white guy with a suit on. So when Mr. Klein see me, he says, Leslie, what you doing down here, boy? He said, I know you ain't in no trouble. So I said, Mr. Klein, I said, I ain't supposed to talk to you. He said, what do you mean? What's wrong? What's going on? I said, well, they locked me up for robbing the drugstore. So him and Mr. Willie Adams looked at each other like, what the fuck? And then he said, look, he said, they locked you up? I said, yeah. I said, they arrested me that morning and told me not to come back to the drugstore or they was going to put me back in jail and stuff. He said, oh my God. Oh Lord. He said, let me talk to this man. He said, Leslie, wait right here for a minute. He went over to this white guy that was standing there talking with this other man that had a vanilla folder in his hand. I'll never forget this. It's like I see this all over again. You understand? I remember him saying to me, come here, Leslie, come here. And I walk over there and he said to the white man, this kid, we know him from the neighborhood. This wasn't the man. This wasn't one of the people who robbed our co-worker. This kid, we know him. That kid is a child. He don't know nothing. That boy ain't involved in nothing like that. This boy is a kid. He played basketball and he's a child. The man said to him, we're not going to use you as witnesses. Y'all dismissed. So I'm like, what's going on? So he says to me, he said, who is your lawyer, Leslie? So I said, he hasn't gotten it. Then as I was telling him, Mr. Conrad was coming up the step. I said, there you go right there. He said, well, let me talk to him. Let me explain something to him. So he went over and him and he was saying something to Mr. Conrad and was telling Mr. Conrad that they knew me from the neighborhood. And then he said something that I didn't understand. He said, we saw all three of the men who robbed our co-worker get into a yellow Volkswagen, and we gave them the information that led to the people arrested the same night the robbery happened. Now, I'm saying I got arrested February 15th, 1975 in broad daylight. It wasn't nighttime at all. So that I was kind of thrown off when I hear this, right? The lawyer, he walks away from Mr. Conrad, Mr. Willie Adams, and comes to me. He said, I thought I told you not to talk to nobody. And he acted like he was upset with me about it. The way he talked to me was like, you ain't got no business talking to nobody. You don't tell nobody nothing about your case or none of that. I don't know who these people are and so forth. So the man said, we were witnesses to actually the people who robbed him. We are the ones that gave the police the information that led to the arrest of the same two men the night the robbery happened. He was like, well, I'm not going to use y'all and so forth. I don't know anything about the law. I don't have no idea that these men were actual witnesses who could have told these people or given them, they had documented proof to show that they seen the people who actually committed the crime, and they telling them that it wasn't me. So the prosecutor dismisses them as witnesses, and only person he used is this one man that's the victim. Now, over years and years and years later, I found out that the robbery happened 4.5 months before my actual arrest. It happened November the 2nd, 1974. What? In an area where they had conflict. Like community, say like you don't go from from Brevoort projects up to East New York back in them days, or unless you ready to fight, because they had issues with each other in that particular time. It wasn't a gang thing. It was more of a community thing, and the kids didn't get along and so forth from one area to another, So I don't have no idea this robbery happened in Cherry Hill, which is a community away from where I live at in Westport, but it's still the project. It's two different low-income housing developed, so that tells you, that gives you another idea of how I was living at the time. We lived in the projects. My mom's work. I took my brothers and them to school. I played basketball in the neighborhood leagues. I played in the scholastic league and school, high school and all. I also worked as a baker's helper for a bakery that had a real rich history in Maryland called Muley's Bakery. Where my grandfather lived at was like 2 blocks away from where the bakery was at. So on the weekends, I would actually go stay at his house. So like when I get out of school on Friday, if we had basketball practice, I would go to practice, leave practice, go to work. And then when I get off of work, I would go to my grandfather's house because it was 2 blocks away from where the actual bakery was at. So during that time, that's in the South Baltimore area, the heart of South Baltimore, where the predominant all African-American communities is. I remember when we was getting ready to go to trial, I was sitting there when they opened the courtroom doors after the incident happened, and Mr. Chester and Mr. Willie Adams was still standing there. And I was sitting in this chair on a bench. And I actually remember this man saying, I asked him, I said, well, the man that they talking about, I suppose they robbed, who is he? Where's he at? So he says to me, don't look. It's the man sitting right behind us with the red plaid shirt on between the 2 white men with suits. I automatically turn around and look. And it's the man I seen standing out in the hallway, right to the side with the white man that morning. So I said, well, they got my picture. When I look back there, he had the folder open and had that picture that was taken when I was arrested. I guess that would be your arrest photograph at the time. That picture, he had that picture and was showing it to the man. Then the next thing I know, they called my name and said that my case was starting. When we go up to the bench table, the state's attorney, which is the white guy that was sitting back there behind me with the man, the victim, with the photograph in the folder, he says, Your Honor, we want to request that the victim be sequestered, meaning they wanted him to go outside the courtroom. They tell me, go sit back in the courtroom anywhere. I go sit back where I was sitting at because that's where I was at. And when I go sit there, the man come back in and they ask him, do he see the person in the courtroom who robbed him? The third person that's supposed to robbed him. Now I'm like, well, you're just sitting behind me. You see me out there in the hallway. You see me talking to Mr. Willie and Mr. Clarence McCurry in the hallway. So you already know what I look like, so why are they asking you to now identify me? But I didn't know anything about the law. I didn't know that this was an improper identification and that my lawyer should have objected to it because he had seen me and this man was sitting right behind us with a photograph that they were showing him. That's impermissible. But I didn't know anything about the law. I didn't have no idea that from the get-go, they was already making it clear that they was going to convict me. I learned about this crime as the man testified. He stated that on November the 2nd, he went to make a delivery of some liquor at an apartment out in the Cherry Hill section of South Baltimore. He said that when he got there, 3 men were standing outside of the building. He walked past them, went into the building, went up to the 2nd floor and knocked on the door. Whoever the lady was said that she didn't order anything, and he turned around to come back out. As he passed the 3 men, one of the men stopped him and asked him, what you got on you? He supposedly said, it's in my top shirt pocket, and then they took the $120 out of his shirt pocket. So that's 3 men, they gotta split $120 of. That's what, $40 each? So I'm listening to him say this, and I'm saying, well, I don't know nothing about that. I don't even know what day it is that they're talking about. If they're talking about a weekend, my weekends were spent in South Baltimore, over by the bakery, because when I got out of school, when we had practice, I would leave practice and go to work, right? So when my turn come to talk and I explained that, why you don't have witnesses? I said, because he never called nobody. I said, plus I was charged with robbing the drugstore. They didn't say nothing about no part-time delivery driver 4 months before I was ever arrested. I never knew anything about none of this stuff, right? So my transcript is like not even 100 pages. And I had a trial. He told me when they asked me what kind of trial I wanted, say trial by the judge. So I said, well, my mother said I was supposed to have trial by jury. He said, I'm the lawyer. She told you to do what I tell you to do. You asked for trial by the judge. And I'm like, okay, all right. That's what my mom told me to do. Was said. So I said, all right. So when they asked me, I asked trial by the judge, right? And a man found me guilty of the first count, armed robbery, and the 5th count, which was use of a handgun in the commission of a felony.
I've been asleep for so long, asking where you go, all alone in this dark place, hell inside, the perfume is strong, and it's on me, waiting on you to call me, the moment you do, believe I'll be awake and free. Wide awake, why they slipping? I won't die today, won't you listen? Squinting, eyes dilating, a pine box, I'm drifting. Mud in my pockets, fingertips gripping the locket, liquor spilled on designer watches. Oh yeah, that new body better be beside.